Well, NewsNation has added more star power to the network. Their new primetime show, Katie Pavlich Tonight, will be kicking off next Monday at 10 p.m. Before joining NewsNation in December, Pavlich served as editor of townhall.com for 16 years and was also a Fox News contributor. Here's a preview of her new show.
There's a new star at NewsNation. Her name is Katie Pavlich.
Smart insight.
Not every situation is the same, so we can put our critical thinking hats on.
Ready to get started.
Let's talk about it.
Katie Pavlich Tonight premieres Monday at 10/9 Central on NewsNation.
Now, Pavlich is also the author of several books, including one New York Times bestseller. Pavlich's show will offer a conservative perspective on the news of the day while also listening to other points of view with an open mind. The ultimate goal is to push through the groupthink and the left-right bias, instead pursuing honest analysis and plain facts.
That's what we try to do as well. Joining us now to discuss more is Katie Pavlich herself.
Great to see you.
Nice to see you, my friend.
Me.
Welcome
Yes.
to the family.
And congratulations.
Thanks. I'm thrilled to be here. Everyone's been amazing. So I'm looking forward to not only the new show, but also having wonderful colleagues as well. So thank you.
It's really exciting. And you're filming in this room, I believe.
Yes, we are. It will be a different time of day, and it will be darker. But yes, we will be sharing the space.
In some, like Inside Baseball, we had a conversation with the entire staff yesterday about how NewsNation is the network for grown-ups.
Yes.
I think when you see you see a lot of different conversations happening on some competitor networks, you don't see people talk through stuff. I think that's the biggest thing about people go into their silos or their echo chambers and hear what they want to hear. I know your show is trying to break through, so tell us a little bit about how that's going to come about in the conversations, especially how tense it is right now with a lot of these conversations.
Yeah, so NewsNation over the last 5 years has built an amazing network that is growing, and they did it to provide news for all Americans, and now they've seen that there's an appetite for conservative, common sense opinion in prime time. And so I'm very much looking forward to pursuing a show that's focused on that. But we're going to have newsmakers, people. We're in Washington, D.C. There's so much opportunity here to talk to people who are driving policy and making decisions that affect Americans in cities and towns across the country. And we're also going to discuss these things with a wide range of people who have different political opinions. Also, think about being in Washington. There are tons of people here working in many different aspects of media and politics and advocacy. So we're going to have people on the show after these newsmakers to discuss the biggest issues of the day, to work through them, to have civil debate and conversation, and to have intellectual diversity on the show. So I'm really much looking forward to that. It's going to be great.
You know, what I think is so great about NewsNation and what The Hill's doing and what we're trying to do on Rising is, you know, when we say we'll hear from conservatives, well, there's a tremendous diversity of thought on the right now. We're living through a very healthy time period of new right, neocon, interventionist, anti-interventionist, economic policy, tariffs, immigration. Like, there are debates happening within the right that if you turn on other television channels, they'll just have one representative of Republican thought who maybe represents what Republican thought was 25 years ago. And you're not even getting a mix of perspectives. And that's what we try to break through that a little bit. You know what I mean? You do it through debate and through having like different people on the right, or people on the right who actually represent what real Americans think about issues rather than like the New York Times conservative columnist.
Yeah, there are a lot of labels get thrown around, but I like to always go back to common sense. You know, is this logical? Does this make sense? How do people feel about it? What are the differences in the opinion of how people are reacting to a certain story? What are the facts, most importantly, of what we're discussing? Because if you can always go back to that, then people can make up their minds in the audience who are watching about their own opinion of some big issue or the reaction to it. So we're really looking forward to bringing a new, fresh perspective every night to the lineup, and we're excited to get started in terms of covering the news every day because, as we know, working in D.C. is like dog years. One feels like 7. The news cycle is moving every 30 seconds, it seems. I mean, just today there's so much happening at the White House on Capitol Hill, which is right across the street. So we're looking forward to continuing the news cycle into the night.
Piggybacking off what Robbie said, some people will look at all the infighting, and there's plenty to talk about on the Democrat side. But as we talk about the Republicans, it seems like even after that Turning Points convention, there's a lot of different particular topics that seem really dramatic. Marjorie Taylor Greene kind of deciding to step away and move and leave her space in the Congress. And then also Thomas Massey recently, as yesterday, Laura Loomer sent one of her reporters to ask him questions and call him a Democrat. I think there's a lot of infighting that, how do you differentiate which voices?
Candace Owens figured out it was time travelers.
Oh, yeah. So in there, Candace Owens, which voices, like, how do you have that debate without saying
Israeli
the party is
time
broken?
travelers.
Correct, only
Trump
in that,
not.
yes. Well, I also think there is the question of, is this infighting really, is it bigger than is not as serious as people make it seem. I mean, just because you have one previous member of Congress who's leaving, still current, but leaving, and one current member of Congress being very loud and getting extra attention because it's convenient politically for certain people to say there's this big riff on the right, and also throwing in personalities on the internet who into the right category just because they were there before doesn't mean they're still there. So I do think the polling actually shows that the Republican Party is they're pretty united on a lot of what the president is doing in his agenda, and he's, of course, still the head of the Republican Party. Now, that's not to say that there won't be discussions and debates going forward, especially as we get into the next presidential election. You know, there's been some talk about JD being the one who's already anointed. I don't think that's true. I think there's going to be a real primary. So there will be, debates and different ideas, but I actually think that the infighting on the right has been overblown, and that the reality of it, especially outside of D.C., is that Republicans are pretty satisfied with it.
Well, you look, for instance, at the ouster of Maduro, wildly popular among Republicans. That doesn't mean we want a permanent troop presence there. We want to be super involved. I think Josh Hawley, who's not usually someone I compliment, frankly, was right to ask questions about that and seek assurances from Marco Rubio that this isn't going to be some lasting commitment. But you poll Latinos, all thrilled with it. Republicans thrilled with it.
Right.
Most successful military operation that we can think of.
Yeah.
And this is the Trump foreign policy.
And it's not just at one moment in time, right? That also translates to politics. So how does that play in Florida? How does that play in Texas when it comes to midterm elections? How does that play with national elections when it comes to what the president has done and the Democratic reaction to it as well? I mean, this is, Maduro is someone that Joe Biden's Justice Department issued charges against, and yet and
they put up a wanted poster.
They
for him.
They did, and now all of a sudden that the president has actually fulfilled getting him out of office and was criticized for not doing it sooner. Now all of a sudden Democrats don't have much to say about it. So yeah, watching all of that very, very closely.
One of the pillars of President Trump's campaign was to change immigration. He felt that Biden had failed. A lot of people on both sides of the aisle agreed that something needed to be done. But there's a lot of criticism right now about what's happening in Minnesota. Whether you think Renee Good was wrong or right, or the officer was wrong or right, there's a lot of conversation about the fact that, did we want to see an American citizen killed? Did we want to see someone shot in the leg? Right. Did we want to see an officer who now CBS is reporting had some internal bleeding? Like, is this the way forward with immigration? Because even people who you say are not on the right, I would consider that like a Joe Rogan. He's not on the right. He voted for Bernie Sanders and Trump, but he's being very critical right now.
Swing voter.
He is being very critical. I think that he should look more closely at the facts. The president has shut the border down. We don't have the issue of people pouring across the border illegally. The focus now is on these communities where sanctuary city policy, these local law enforcement officers aren't allowed to hold criminal aliens with ICE retainers and final removal orders in jails. So then ICE agents have to go into the communities, do these raids. Then you have these agitators showing up and attacking them with shovels, boxing them into certain areas. And I think people need to understand ICE agents are not, you shouldn't do this to local police either, but they are not local police officers.
Right.
They are trained to take on cartel members, gangbangers, rapists, murderers, people trafficking drugs, the most hardened and dangerous armed criminals that we have in this country. That is their job. That's what they're trained to do. And when you have people around them, surrounding them and attacking them, the response is obviously going to be forceful. They have a job to do. They're trying to do it. These people are showing up and they have training to go and attack them. They've been talking about this since President Trump got back into office to fulfill his campaign promise of getting these criminals off the streets. And so my question is, well, what would you like them to be doing?
Right.
Because if they're not there, then the people who they are trying to get out of these communities get to stay. The issue is that the local law enforcement and local politicians, especially in Minnesota, need to step up and say, stop blocking officers with your car, stop agitating them, stop impeding federal law enforcement. It's a crime to do that, and let them do their jobs. But instead, we have this clash. All of this could be avoided.
Yeah, wouldn't that be, you talk about common sense, the compromise, the solution would be, okay, right, I get it. It's not at all ideal to have federal law enforcement that don't understand local conditions being the one executing these operations, and you're seeing these, I don't like seeing these clashes either. These are American streets. But that requires then the enforcement to be done actually by the local police at the direction of blue city leadership, and they won't do it. Well, we know these people won't do it. We know Tim Walz and Fry have no no interest in
It can
doing
all
any
be
of this.
prevented if they just would be cooperative. And the bottom line is if you have a sanctuary policy where ICE detainers are not honored, that means that you can't transfer these criminals into jail, which is safer for the criminal. It's certainly safer for local law enforcement. It's safer for ICE, and it's safer for the general public because you're not seeing these clashes in the streets, and then of course the consequences that come with that. So I think it could all be avoided if Democrats would just work with the federal government. And you know what? Barack Obama had ICE agents. You know, President Biden didn't have as many working, but this Immigration and Customs Enforcement is an essential part of American law enforcement to get the worst of the worst off of the streets.
Some part of the problem with that is that some people weren't the worst of the worst as far as criminals. Like the criminal act they did is cross the border illegally. But some people who are arrested are people dropping their kids off at school or other incidents where we're seeing a handicapped woman pulled out of a car. You know, we're seeing all these incidents come up where people are like, where are the criminals, the rapists, the people that President Trump touted on the campaign trail? I know that he's listed all the people that have committed crimes like that have been deported or jailed or arrested. But there's still a lot of people that get sacrificed in the meantime in between that. And people are like, is this the policy that we were hoping for? Including the people that were, when you raid factories and things like that are working in working places like where President Trump built the Trump Tower, where he used illegal migrants. And so it's also hurting American businesses in certain ways.
Well, actually, the wages of Americans have gone up, and job openings for Americans have gone up as deportations have gone up. So the way of life for actual Americans who have had a hard time getting these jobs, especially in the construction industry, and those who refuse to hire illegal immigrants are the ones who are benefiting now because they don't have someone undercutting them with cheaper labor. So the wages are higher. A lot of the labor unions are loving the fact that they're deporting illegal labor because now they have higher wages for their workers. In terms of people getting wrapped up in sacrifice, the law is a law, and it goes back again to if local jurisdictions would actually help with these ICE raids. You know, you don't have ICE going into a factory. You have them going into jails because you have the hardest criminals there. But if they go into a factory and there are people there who are illegal, they can't just say, we're going to enforce the law on some people and not enforce the law on others. We don't get to decide that crossing the border is no longer a crime because it is. And so, again, we could avoid a lot of those issues of people being concerned about people who only break a little bit of illegal immigration. I mean, I think that the president made it clear that if you came to the country illegally, that we're going to deport you. And that's what he's fulfilling in terms of his obligations. And also, there's a lot of context that's being lost on this. I mean, people, were screaming about people getting arrested at the Home Depot parking lot. Well, and on job sites. Well, according to Homeland Security, there were trafficking of humans and drug deals going on at these work sites. So there's this underground economy, illegal economy. And so it's, on the outside, it may seem like that's a little harsh, but there is a lot more to the story there.
Yeah. And there's a mandate to do it, right? This is what Trump was elected to enact, a vision of some level of deportation. I would be a little bit more selective than some people in the administration as they prioritize these things, as they do, showy displays of toughness that I think are turning off some members of the Trump coalition, but they have to do something and they can't leave it to local law enforcement in these cities because they're not going to do anything.
I do hope to see the way that Trump or Mamdani invited himself to the White House and they had a dialogue. I hope that, because I think we're past the point of pointing fingers from who started this. And I would hope that the president and the administration or Fry and Walz can reach out and sit down with the president to figure out what immigration reform looks like that avoids some of these incidents that we've seen recently.
Well, I mean, the president's always been open to anybody coming to the White House to talk to him about these issues, but it seems like people on the left have dug their heels on this issue in particular. I mean, Tim Walz is wrapped up in some of this fraud, and of course, they're constantly just defending the worst criminals in the country for the sake of opposing the president, when the president's always been open to having these discussions, to the detriment of maybe some of the people in his base who are saying, what do you mean you're going to talk about some kind of amnesty program? Right. They're opposed to that, but the president is willing to at least have a conversation about some of the things that you mentioned.
Right, and the president seems more open to the importance of high-skill immigration than some other people on the right. He's talked about, if we're going to build the factories here, we need people who know how to build them. And if they're all in South Korea, I don't know what to tell you. And he got pushback from that on the right. It's really interesting. I think it demonstrates that there is a healthy debate even on this topic.
Yeah, and he's also open to having foreign students in the universities stay here after they graduate to get jobs.
Please
and a lot of people,
keep them here. If they were going to bring them here, well, then they should stay.
That's his argument.
Don't send them back. It's insane.
That's his argument, that also there's people in the conservative coalition and
Right.
or the populist coalition who would say, why should I compete as an American with someone who's here from South Korea or from China or from somewhere else? We want Americans to have the opportunity to go to those colleges in the first place and then to get the opportunity of a job afterwards.
Yeah.
So lots of things to cover, and we'll all be doing it at 10 p.m. and also here on your show. So thank you.
So exciting.
Yes.
Thank you for joining the family.
Thank
we're welcome
you very
to
much.
have you.
Great to see you guys.
And
Good
we're
to see you
happy
around
to
the
share
office.
You can watch Katie Pavlich Tonight on Monday at 10 p.m. on NewsNation. Just go to newsnation.com to find your channel.
All right. Bye-bye.